What's up, guys? It's Chris. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I heard some people in my stream talking about this video Otzdarva made, where he mentioned some perks that he thought were problematic in Dead by Daylight, and I kind of wanted to quickly give my thoughts and react to some of this stuff live with you guys. I haven't watched the video yet. I'll probably skip through a bunch of stuff that's maybe just drawn out and stuff like that because the video is 41 minutes long, and I want to condense it a little bit, but let's get right into it.
Hello friends, this is Otz, and today I have some hot takes for you. We're going to be talking about a group of perks that I consider to be problematic or unhealthy for the game.
Already looking at this list right now, I'm very weirded out, but we'll see what he talks about here.
Grows in power whenever the killer finds a totem that has been destroyed by the survivors, and then you can relight that totem and create new ones, and the more you have, the stronger it gets. The first two effects are the most common ones you're gonna get and are already very, very strong. It's the slower healing and slower gens, which is the first one.
Those are probably the best two effects.
Brutal. This is far, far stronger than most hexes, even some of the stronger ones. So there is a problem with this perk already. On its own, it does absolutely nothing unless survivors cleanse totems. And survivors cleanse totems for points, for side objectives and archives, and maybe to power up certain weak perks like inner strength.
So, yeah, it's taking hexes, which are severely flawed in the value you can get from them being gone in 10 seconds in the game, and making it so they're not completely useless, which I like. Also, survivors know exactly where the Pentimento totems are going to be because they're the ones who cleansed the totems and allowed the survivor to have this up. I don't really see this as being the most problematic perk in Dead by Daylight, but that could totally just be me. We have seen with the Onryo how survivors can really struggle if you give them a secondary objective besides just holding left click on gens. So maybe that's what he's talking about. It's just really hard for solo queue survivors to be able to deal with an actual second objective. But yeah, this is a weird one to me.
Which is far from being super meta or overzealous or clairvoyant. So punishing survivors,
yeah, a lot of people running clairvoyance
super hard for doing a side objective just feels absolutely awful. There was an archive not long ago to do totems, and if you run this perk during that week, I guarantee you would destroy most.
I kind of get what he's saying, but I feel like it's more extending that secondary objective than punishing. And now, it is definitely punishing, don't get me wrong. 30% repair speed and 30% healing speed, yeah. But, I mean, if survivors are just hopping into the game cleansing totems, you know, they're not doing very well to begin with. That's not generally what you do if you're looking to win, so.
Of your games, you should never have an effect that is so strong that can happen randomly against teams that are just minding their business and just doing side objectives. It also makes it so that if you ever go against a kill that has a hex, unless it's Devour Hope, and even if it is Devour Hope, you probably want to not do totems until you absolutely have to.
So he's saying that they shouldn't be punished for doing not their main objective. Now imagine the killer is just deciding to not chase survivors right away and they want to walk around looking at scenery, or what's the side objective? Maybe they want to get their scream achievement by making people scream. So it's the survivor's fault for doing gens because the killer isn't trying to do their main objective. I don't quite understand exactly that point, but either way, I really do not believe Pentimento is anywhere near the most problematic perk in the game, even on the killer end. So I'm gonna go to the next perk here. That's kind of my thoughts on it, and this is really weird to me.
Moving on is the recently buffed Buckle Up. It's funny that this perk used to be useless, and now it's generally one of the most insane perks in the game. Whenever you pick up a survivor from the ground, you and the survivor both get a massive 10 seconds of endurance, plus a few other effects. Now, this wouldn't be a big deal if it wasn't for the fact that this works with 4 other people. There is a
so even then, it would still be kind of a problem, but yeah, it is a complete win-win for the survivors. There is no downside. It's a total freebie, win-win situation. You know, you just pick up your teammate and he has to just stare at you for 10 seconds and your teammate. The thing is with We're Gonna Live Forever, you know, you down the person who picked them up. Soul Guard, you down the person who picked them up. Made for this, you down the person who got picked up. right? Buckle Up eliminates that. Both of them are completely safe, which is very weird. And you can never really tell what effect is happening anymore, which is kind of silly, in my opinion.
Problem. There is a problem. This perk would be okay in a vacuum if you only used it to pick up survivors from the ground when the killer is getting a little bit greedy and slugging. But that's not what happens. What you do with this perk is to run it with 4 people, so you can run to a teammate on the ground, immediately pick them up if you're healthy, and then both you and that person are essentially invincible for the next 10 seconds, which allows you to get free escapes at the exit gates, free protection against any kind of chase. It also is not as good against the super aggressive killers as anything. And
so I do want to touch on this a little bit. I agree that it's not just this perk specifically, it's the game as a whole, the direction I see it going in. It's almost like they're trying to give survivors like legitimate god mode consistently, because they removed the healing meta, right, where everybody could heal themselves in 6 seconds, and now they give them the made for this resilience combo, which basically makes them completely overtuned in chase and just makes anybody look good in chase. And now they're giving this god mode where both survivors get 10 seconds of endurance just for picking a teammate up. And now that's where I see the problem. You know, a game that's supposed to be a horror game just giving genuinely god mode to the survivor. I mean, the only thing they could do is make hope so the wings actually mean that the survivors can fly. Like that's where we're going, I think. But you know, maybe that's just me as more of a killer main. I do see a problem with this perk though. Absolutely.
Next up is Save the Best for Last. This is high in the department of unhealthy perks.
So here, I just want to, before we go deeper into this, Save has a ton of counterplay. Anytime I see Save in play on the killer end while I'm playing Survivor, I'm like, okay, the Obsession has to take some hits here, right? And the main people outside of Deathslinger that are using Save the Best for Last are M1 killers, who could definitely use that extra boost in chase, especially on a lot of these newer maps, which are extremely Survivor-sided. And again, when they're an M1 killer, there's so much counterplay to just not getting hit and letting this perk get stacked at all. The main people using it are M1s, so you could, you know, drop some pallets, play chase decently, and this perk really isn't doing anything till maybe end game. And at that point, you know, it gets a kill with save guaranteed, right? That's how I'm looking at it. The fact that this is above made for this in his list is mind-blowing to me, but let's hear what he has to say.
But this is by far the perk that most people defend, and I get most pushback when I talk against it. I used to love this perk. I thought this perk was great. It's obviously a very strong perk because it allows you to get more and more relentless in chase.
It's a great perk.
And that's power.
And let's not ignore the fact that you have to build this perk up for it to be useful. You know, you don't get one hit and then you have a very strong chase power like made for this. You have to build this thing up throughout the game. Not an M1 killer, it's going to be tough.
Or to hit you with, so it's pretty unavoidable that near the end of the game this perk is going to have a lot of stacks, and around that time this perk allows you to do 2 things that in my opinion are really disgusting. The first one is to just shred through deep wound and protection and endurance states. In many situations the killer has options to play really scummy and camp a hook or immediately tunnel someone, and there are perks and base kit features to protect that person from dying too quickly. The base kit and
so the scummy thing. I mean, there are absolutely. I will not really ever go out of my way to like tunnel and stuff like that. But if I'm doing a win streak and that's absolutely the play, I'm gonna do it. I absolutely don't consider that scummy. Like that means survivors who want to do gens really quick with toolboxes are scumbags for trying to get their objective done fast and win the game. They're total scumbags, right? I don't like going down that route where because one side is playing to win, they're a fucking scumbag. Maybe that's just me, but I'm going to hear him out here.
Endurance, decisive, all these things. With Save the Best for Last, you are pretty much encouraged because you gain stacks to hit people that come out of the hook for those stacks, even if you don't tunnel them.
I do that anyway.
I don't think that's very good.
Now, if somebody's farming their teammate and I see, you know, obviously the teammate who gets unhooked, a lot of the time will be trying to take that hit, or they'll stick around because they got a flashlight. I'm going to take that hit and make them mend before they heal. They stick around almost all the time because of the free BT, off the record, whatever they got, right? I usually don't go for them right off the hook, but they want to throw themselves at me. I'm going to take that hit. To be fair to him, I think what he's saying is if the obsession is unhooking, you're going to go for the person who got off the hook. And that's fair. That is fair. Definitely something I would probably look to do if the Obsession farmed their teammate in front of me, and then I would go for the person off the hook. I would. But is that the Perk's fault, or is that the Survivor's fault for farming their teammate and not taking the hit for? I don't know. Either way, this is also a little bit weird. Just the fact that it's above MFT is mind-blowing to me here.
It also has this whole thing where in the end game, you will hook a person, and if you have several stacks, there is nothing that can be done by the survivors unless they also run Deliverance or something. It is almost impossible to guarantee any kind of escape, no matter how many survivors you have, if the killer has saved the best for last.
Yeah, they can get one kill.
Unless you have a minute to, you know, send the Obsession, take a hit, maybe, and then it's basically impossible. So...
Yeah, you would have to use Reassurance, get the Obsession to take a couple hits, run it out. Yeah, I mean, but are we complaining about a killer really securing one kill in endgame if they're getting there with save? I mean, come on now. Like, there's already so much stuff going for survivors here. If the killer had a rough game and wants to secure one kill, I don't see that as placing this as the third most problematic perk in Dead by Daylight.
The endgame potential and the tunneling potential of Save the Best for Last, I think, is a little bit too much. The way I would change this perk, if you hit a survivor and they have deep wound, you don't gain stacks. That should be, or maybe the perk doesn't work and you have a normal cooldown, just to discourage killers from just always hitting people off the hook.
Yeah, that's a bad change.
I think shouldn't be too much of a nerf and would make the perk still good otherwise. I also think that once the last gen is powered, the perk should not be able to gain more stacks.
This is the last I'm going to say on this. That is a bad change. I mean, you know how people go... survivors, you know, old DS and stuff, when they have the God mode off the record, stuff like that, they're going to be making themselves a nuisance. If there's no punishment for that with the killer with save, they're going to do it constantly, and then you're going to get called a tunneler in endgame because they're throwing themselves at you when they think they have God mode and they're not good at the game. It's a problem to me. I want to go over to Adrenaline now because, again, I don't want this video to be an hour long. So
next up is Adrenaline. Adrenaline is a really, really powerful perk.
One of the best survivor perks in the game. I have lost plenty of games to Adrenaline in the past. You know, just one or two of those popping while I'm waiting on, you know, banking on my no way out. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And then boom, it's like, oh, they're all healthy and picked up off the ground. But it is like the one meta survivor perk I see that's actually rewarding survivors for doing something. Like that they actually got their objective done and they get rewarded for it. And it's not a permanent haste buff like Hope. It is the one... Now, yes, it is a fantastic, strong, super strong perk. I don't like it, but compared to a lot of the other stuff in the game for Survivor, this one is actually rewarding them for doing something. It's one of the ones I'll hate on the least, to be honest.
We've explained why a million times. It's not the fact that it can pick you up from the ground. It's not the fact that it can give you the speed boost, which is pretty insane. It's a very strong perk, but that's fine. The first thing, it still wakes you up against Freddy. Why?
Yeah, that
Freddy
is weird.
Is one of the weaker killers on the game. It doesn't...
I also never... I know this is kind of like a different tangent, but I never understood why Freddy has full endgame perks when his endgame is like the worst in Dead by Daylight. Like, it makes no sense. You can't even teleport in the endgame. It's very weird. But anyway, sorry.
Another thing that I also think is completely messed up is that it works out of a hook. What the killer has to do to play around you is to drop you, then you insta-pick yourself up, and then he hits you, and then he puts you on the hook. That is so stupid. There should never be a situation where a killer has to drop a survivor. Maybe in case of Adrenaline. I feel like that's such a dumb thing to do.
So I guess a big reason I don't see a big problem with Adrenaline as much is because in this MFT Hope meta, I am running heavy slowdown in my killer builds to prevent them from getting to endgame, because once they are in endgame, they're God mode already. You cannot ever catch somebody with this. It's genuinely impossible. So I'm trying to prevent them from ever getting there. And I'm not really seeing this pop. You know, maybe the occasional hatch close and then Adrenaline pops. I'm like, oh yeah, he had that one. But like, maybe that's the reason I don't see as much of a problem with this anymore, to be fair. But again, ranking this above MFT is so ridiculous to me. I really need to hear what he has to say about Made for This right now. So I'm going to skip to that.
Next we have Made for This. Made for This has 2 effects, and each of them would be good enough for a perk on each
They're
other.
ridiculous.
The fact that there are so many horrible perks in the game that have very bad effects and then this perk has 2 good effects. It's so unfair.
That's a
alone, I think,
really
makes
good.
it very unfair. But why is it unhealthy?
That's a really good point, actually, that I have not brought up about this perk. Now, I've brought up the fact that it has 2 effects, which the fact that they put this 3% haste in the game was insane, and then they also gave it 10% endurance. Like, wasn't the point of removing Dead Hard, or nerfing it, I don't want to say removing, nerfing it so the killer didn't have to just sit there staring at a survivor for 5 seconds while they, wait out the E button? Now it's impossible to wait out the actual distance they're getting in chase, and you still have to stare at somebody for 10 seconds if they heal a teammate. Like, it is so insanely goofy. I have no idea what the devs are trying to do with this game at this point when I read something like this. I think it's the most broken thing in the game right now, and it's not even close, but I want to hear what else he has to say about it.
For the game. I've made a video that covers it in a bit more detail, but yeah, the very insidious 3% that stacks with other speed boosts is pretty nasty.
It's gross.
The fact that survivors get 10 seconds of endurance for healing,
no point,
and you as a killer get punished for going for the healer.
Yeah.
That is, let's say that you've hooked one person and that person gets healed under the hook by someone else that's injured. The healthy thing right now for the game would be for you to go for the healer and not tunnel. But now if they have this perk, you get punished. So
right. So again, trying to go back to the point I made earlier with Buckle Up, almost giving survivors God mode constantly. I really don't get it. And there's so many survivors I've seen actually argue that this perk is fair. It is balanced. And it is so ridiculously overtuned that I don't have words for it. It's mind-blowing to me.
It's almost better for you to go for the person that's been healed, which is possibly the person that came off the hook. It does, again, punish the killer for going for different targets and rewards the survivors for doing something that they should be doing naturally. It does a little bit too much for almost no...
I mean, but that's, to be fair, if he's going to say it does a little too much for no reason, that's literally almost every strong survivor perk in the game. It's either rewarding them for bad gameplay, like getting hit here, or nothing at all, like getting windows for spawning into the match and stuff like that. That's where we're at in the game, and that I don't think those perks should be in the S tier and the best perks in the game personally, but maybe that's just me.
No investment, and you can still use exhaustion perks on top of it if you don't mind losing it temporarily. Pretty nasty perk. I also believe that the reason why they've made so many exhaustion perks, it's like so many exhaustion perks right now for killer, is because they thought that, yeah, we'll just give killer something like genetic limits, and they thought that would be...
They're not good. Like, I see people in my comments also saying, oh, run Fearmonger made for this. Dude, they have to walk for 5 seconds when they hear you coming, and they're it's not like counterplay. It's none. It's nothing.
Completely fine. It would be like a natural counter. It is not. It is definitely not. Next up is Knockout. Knockout is such a difficult perk to understand.
I can't believe he went so little into made for this and so much into save the best for last. That is insane. This perk is a massive issue right now, in my opinion.
I don't think there should be a perk that creates such a divide that is so good against one group and so mediocre against another. The only people that run perks like Knockout consistently are really nasty players that just want to leave you on the ground for 4 minutes, which is already some of the most unfun thing you can do in DBD.
True, which is why I said Slug Onryo was one of the most boring and lame things they've ever had in Dead by Daylight before 3-Gen Skull Merchant. I actually did a most toxic pig build where I did use knockout and blindness traps and was slugging people. It was a most toxic build, and it was disgusting, and I definitely discourage you guys from running that. It felt terrible. But again, it was really fun when I did use it in the knockout dredge build, making it like a real horror scenario where people are getting downed in Nightfall. They have no idea where their teammates are, and then I'm hooking them outside at Nightfall. Now, if people are actually just, bringing it to Larry's and bleeding people out on the ground with knockout the entire time, that's pretty fun. That's messed up, and it is a problem with the perk's design. I definitely don't think it's OP, but I get where he's coming from here.
Next, we have Deliverance, a very, very strong perk on the survivor.
So if he's going to say Deliverance is a quite unhealthy perk, I wonder what he thinks about the anti-camping mechanic that's being added to the game right now. I do.
What will happen with this perk? Number one, if a survivor unhooks themselves, they don't trigger Devour Hope, they don't trigger Floods of Rage, they don't trigger Make Your Choice. So this counters several killer perks, which is not a big deal. But more importantly, it basically punishes you for hooking someone other than the person that you hooked initially.
And now I want to go over this too. So this is one of the few meta survivor perks that's actually rewarding survivors for doing something, when the only thing it's rewarding them for is normal gameplay stuff, going to unhook your teammate, which is, I really don't get it. But, you know, that's pretty much the state of the game as far as any strong survivor perk. They are perks. You bring them in to buff yourself. But when you look at stuff like Pentimento, how you have to have other perks combined to make it work, and the survivors have to be cleansing your totems for it to work. And then Save the Best for Last, you have to be stacking up throughout the entire game. It's generally only used on M1 killers. No way out, you're getting rewarded for hooking every survivor one time, and it's going to end game. Pain res. Yeah, you get what I'm saying, right?
But more importantly, it basically punishes you for hooking someone other than the person that you hooked initially. So how do you dodge Deliverance? By mega super turbo tunneling the first person. If you somehow manage to insta down the first person upon unhook, the second guy doesn't.
Okay, I'm gonna skip through this a little bit. In the average solo queue match, like you're playing killer, you know, you don't have to do that. You could just kind of vibe it up. I see 2 Deliverance pops in my game. I'm like, whatever, I'll still win. Right, but at that top level, which is what he's talking about here, yes, this perk is extremely, extremely strong, and the design of it is very weird. But again, for your average game, it's not that much of a problem. So I'm going to go to the next one, which is really interesting that he's putting here, because to get this working, you do have to one hook every survivor throughout the match, and then you get an extra minute at the end of the game to be able to get your kills. So it's rewarding the killer for playing nice, which is how he would probably put it when he said playing scummy, tunneling somebody, right? It's rewarding the killer for playing nice and giving them some extra time to be able to try and get their kills.
For some reason, it also works in the 1v1, which is incredibly unfun.
Oh, is that his point?
That you're the last person alive and you try to open a gate and the gate is unopenable.
I mean, if we're going to go down this route, then DS should be right up here at the quite unhealthy. Even though the perk isn't very strong, you know, the fact that I had 3 people killed the other day, and then I found the Yui, and I went to pick her up after I downed her in 5 seconds. She could DS me with her entire team dead as if I was tunneling her. I don't know. It's very weird. Not that it bought her much time at all, but it's still, I mean, that's kind of goofy. Yeah, so basically I think what he's saying is when people are swipping, this perk's almost impossible to deal with because they're going to run around the pallet, and it's kind of goofy. And that is true. It can be kind of annoying sometimes. But again, you're going to win the game eventually and have some fun as the killer. So not that big of a deal to me. And I'd much rather see 4 survivors running around having fun with flip-flop power struggle than running made for this resilience, hope, deja vu every single game. I would, personally.
Next up is Force Hesitation, a really strange perk that only triggers when you down one super. And
okay, that's
I don't know. I guess you could argue, well, that's almost every other perk out there. Any perk can be used for this purposes, and you might be right. But I have a feeling that this is a perk that almost encourages you to play like the dirtiest you possibly can.
I guess I get what he's saying, because whenever I've tried this perk, it does absolutely nothing for me, since the 16-meter range is so insignificant. It is so small. The 20% hindered is massive, but Behavior missed the point. If they want the perk to actually get value with Infectious, make it Infectious range, right? Make it like 32 meters. That would make it an actually solid perk, maybe a little bit too strong. Yeah, I've never gotten value from this because that's generally not how I'm playing and when I've tried it out. So I guess I see where he's coming from. But now he's going to talk about Boil Over, which I think is like the Franklin's demise of Survivor. It's just an annoying perk that I really dislike. It just doesn't feel good to play against. I'm not saying it's insanely strong. It's just annoying.
We then have Boil Over. This perk used to be really bad, then they buffed it, and it was a nightmare.
Too strong.
And now it's in a spot where it's not as offensive.
Right. Now there's a lot of hooks now in
Midwish. It's one of these perks
Midwish.
that just encourages the most disgusting, exploitative gameplay where survivors will...
I actually ran into a survivor who was running no mither, flip-flop, Boil Over, and Breakdown, and they would sabo hooks preemptively, so there's literally nothing I could do. They were actually God mode, and it was on a map where you just can't do anything about it. And Man, it is something survivors definitely abuse, and I think it's really boring gameplay, but for some reason they like enjoy the fact that even though they can't loop the killer, they still can't die, which I think is super lame.
Next up is Hope. Again, this is not a perk that I have a lot of issue on its own, but the fact that haste still stacks and that this perk gives you 7 haste, I do think is quite insane. Streetwise is probably a perk that most of you don't even think about ever. Me neither, don't tell me wrong. But this perk is actually insane. This perk makes good items last a little bit longer, and the biggest issue is that it stacks with itself. So when you have multiple survivors on a...
Okay, as you were saying, the double streetwise stacking makes the item never run out, like on toolboxes and stuff. Yeah, okay, fair. I only ever ran this with a flashlight or something like that when I'm playing Survivor because I don't like toolboxes and medkits. There's nothing fun about them. They're just over-the-top strong for the most part. So I just don't do it. But, you know, I do definitely recognize a lot of Survivors will be bringing in Commodious with Streetwise and stuff like that. And the gens just get blasted through. I feel like it's more of a problem with the toolboxes themselves than this perk to begin with. So I'm just going to leave it there, and we're going to go look at Pain Res because I'm really curious about this.
Next up, we have Pain Res. This perk does a little bit too much. It is a healthy perk in that it encourages you to hook.
You have to win chases twice with all 4 survivors to down them, hook them, and get the RNG of a scored hook nearby to be able to even use the perk. How is this unhealthy?
The survivor, and then hook a different survivor, and then hook a different survivor. What ends up happening a lot of times is that killers hook one survivor, then they trade at the hook, and then they get another one, but they traded, and they kept putting pressure by camping it. Or they hook one survivor, get Pain Res.
I think he's heavily exaggerating here. That is not how my games go when I'm playing Survivor or Killer. Maybe he's seen some niche situations where that's went down. But, yeah, that is not generally how I'm seeing Pain Res used at all.
I don't understand why Ruin deactivates when one person is dead and Pain Res doesn't. How about we make Pain Res deactivate when one person has died?
Oh my god, Otzdarva, what? Dude, look. What? You're getting 25% off of a gen for... I don't... Oh, God. I don't even know what he's thinking. I don't know what he's thinking. How does he think that change to Ruin is good? Is that what he's saying? He thinks that a Hex should just be removed if somebody dies? A Hex that's already, like, shitty? Oh, God. What?
And that way, if you want to hook multiple people, that's great, but you can't hook multiple people after you've already tunneled one guy out and get the effects. It's a very strong perk that should be a bit more restrained. The fact that it also makes people scream and trigger Deadman Switch and all of that, I also think is a bit disgusting, but that would be, I guess, alright. Next, Ultimate Weapon, an insane...
So, okay, here's what I'll say about Ultimate Weapon. I think the survivors it's really bothering are the average Windows user because it's blindness. They can't see, run to yellow, and look like they can loop like that way. If you really don't want to get found as a survivor, run Calm Spirit. I see tons of survivors doing it now. I am one of those people who definitely would like to get chased when I'm playing Survivor. I don't just like sitting there holding left click on a gen. I actually have toggle on, so I don't even have to do that when I'm doing a gen. The game just literally does the generator for me. The one issue I have with this is seeing multiple Weskers in a row run Ultimate Weapon, Dead Man Switch, Pain Res. Makes it just impossible to do gens and very, very annoying. I can't lie to you. So that is one thing they could, you know, figure out maybe with Wesker, where maybe it doesn't. I really don't know. I don't know what exactly they could do with it, but that's one thing.
Jigsaw boxes. The evil potential for this perk, which has a very small cooldown, by the way, is so ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. I don't know. How do you change this perk? How do you change this perk?
Yeah, I don't know.
To keep it relevant. Maybe make it only work a limited amount.
I could see them making it so it doesn't make people scream off of pig traps and stuff like that, because that is pretty obnoxious. I honestly don't think they should remove the gen part of it. But maybe that's just me as more of a killer main. Okay, well, I mean, that's fine. I think Ultimate Weapon's a strong perk. I would not go so far as to say it's problematic, especially when you look at how every strong survivor perk is set up at the moment. Well, almost every strong survivor perk is set up, where it's just a complete freebie for nothing. I mean, that's Ultimate Weapon. It's a complete freebie. You get to find the people crouching around the map in corners that you wouldn't be able to find. I actually used it to be able to find people hiding in basement for 5 minutes. That was nice. But either way, let's check out the next one.
Next up is Face the Darkness. Not a super meta perk, in my opinion, but also has a similar problem by making survivors scream and interrupting themselves. I see this perk... I don't think that if you're doing a box on an action that can potentially kill you, your scream should interrupt it. Maybe what they should do with Pig is make it so that if you scream, you lose some of the progress, but you don't lose all of it.
That's fair.
So yeah, maybe this is more of a Pig issue than a Face the Darkness issue.
Yeah, we need to nerf Pig. That's what he's saying. We need to nerf the Pig. And I feel like the entire community's been thinking this for a long time. The Pig is just too overpowered, and we have to own up to that.
You could be like, well, maybe they did one gen fast, but it's a toolbox, so it's understandable. But if they keep doing gens across the map throughout the game really, really fast, and they have this perk, it totally could be a legit player or it could be a cheater.
Right.
And you would not know the difference just because this perk
is
so insane at the end of time.
Yeah, I don't think this should stack with Stakeout at all, in my opinion. I like the idea of them making it so you actually have to focus on gens and be able to hit great skill checks to get value out of a perk and make it actually rewarding survivors for doing something to speed up the gens rather than everything else in the game like Deja Vu, Resilience, Prove Thyself, which is just complete free gen speed. But then they made it so it does synergize with Stakeout, so again, it takes no skill at all to use. That's the only problem I have with that perk. Let's check out Off the Record.
It also makes you not do any injured noises, and it hides you from auras. That's a lot of stuff for a single perk.
Super overloaded.
And
but
if anything, they should make this perk like a common perk so that survivors don't need to buy a DLC to have it.
Whoa. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. That is not where I thought he was going for that. Sorry. So 80 seconds endurance is a lot of time. There's, stuff that there's problems with it. The killer can just hit them off the hook and that endurance is gone, obviously, right away. But then they could have DS, Dead Hard, whatever, help them out with that, and stuff like that. The aura reading and 100% Iron Will for 80 seconds is a lot. Generally, I'm not going for these survivors right off the hook, with or without Off the Record. But there are definitely situations where the survivor just has Off the Record, gets unhooked, and just sits around me for the entire duration, teabagging pallets because they know they're immortal, whatever, just looking real cute and stuff. And I do think that's pretty lame. But again, the whole God mode argument I was making earlier, what can you do? The perk is extremely, extremely strong, and especially with the survivors I mentioned who just run around you after they get unhooked. Save the best for last is massive for dealing with a perk that is so overloaded. I'm not trying to say Off the Record doesn't belong in the game. I do believe some anti-tunnel perks and stuff should be in the game, especially for the weaker survivors who don't really know what they're doing in Chase. Help them out so they don't just get bodied right over and over. And Save the Best for Last helps deal with the annoying ones. That's why I really don't see Save as a super annoying or overtuned perk. Like, he's ranked here.
Counterplay to it.
Dude, it's not even just beginners. I have like 4,000 hours in the game, and the skill checks against a doctor with like unnerving, it was actually insanely hard to hit.
I feel like this is one of those perks that you only really, like impossible skill check builds, you only really see it when the killer is going nuts and making things really, really nasty. So
maybe,
much like with Hyperfocus, I would like to see the effects of this perk lessened a little bit, but also make the perk a bit more usable in other contexts. So maybe the healing progress could be a bit less, the heal and debuff could be a bit less severe, but it could also have a lingering effect to last a bit longer once you've left the...
Okay, like 10 seconds or something.
Radius, for example.
Interesting.
So I'd like to see that. If you
yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Next up, we have Rancor. Rancor shows one survivor the obsession, the aura.
I'm gonna skip this a little bit.
Perks.
Yeah, what I had was this one clown guy named Aronad who made some convoluted, like 140-page guide or something. He had this perk and knew he was getting bodied. He started freaking out over a single Dead Hard, and I was the obsession. He eventually downed me and just sat on me slugged for the last 2 gens to be able to get his Rancor. I was the only kill he got that entire match, but there is some problems with the perk that are a little bit weird. I definitely don't think it's super overpowered, but there's just parts about it that are strange.
home.
My Megs definitely do the chest, so I don't know. But I'm just going to skip through this one. Hoarder's not a big thing for me. I very rarely see it and almost never use it.
Else. I also feel like the next perk, Hubris, is a bit strange. I don't know why survivors have to be punished for stunning the killer. Stunning the killer is already a risky thing. If you are not...
I don't know why survivors have to be rewarded for vaulting a window with live, right? I'm not trying to make this argument that Hubris is a super balanced and cool perk, but we have to look at both sides here. You know, survivors get live, the perk that makes it almost impossible to commit to chase with them on certain maps when they vault a window. You know, we have to be realistic here.
Screw with the killer when you blind them or when you stun them like Hubris. It does feel a bit weird, but I guess they were running out of perk ideas. I don't personally love it. I feel like it's a bit strange. Again, just a very personal thing. The next perk I really, really hate. It's
should have been almost base kit.
It's a perk that allows you to destroy a totem.
Yeah, and I don't know why survivors could fully destroy hexes and stuff like that, and then they introduced Pentimento because of that to actually give killers something to work off of. And then Shattered Hope had to be a perk that you bring in and not base kit. I don't know. It's just a whole weird thing.
Next up is Blood Rush. This is a perk that allows survivors to injure themselves to give themselves endurance for a limited time. And there are a few situations. The situations where it works.
No. They don't get endurance, do they? Don't they get their exhaustion back?
It doesn't do a whole... It's not like the most insane perk in the game.
Definitely not.
But it can give you a very important second win, a very important second chance. Problem.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, they're better together, aka situational awareness.
Pretty much useless.
Is weird. It makes the generator... It's a good perk, don't get me wrong. It makes the generator that you work on yellow.
Good perk.
So that other survivors can find it within a range, and you also see the killer and other survivors if they go down and stuff like that. Now, there's a problem.
Well, how is this a good perk? You people, like, dude, it shows your aura to your gen in yellow. Dude, people could think that's Trail of Torment. People could think you put Blast Mine on it. People could think... I mean, there's so many... No. This is not a good perk at all. Seeing auras of survivors for 10 seconds, run Bond or Empathy or something. This is... I don't understand how he said that's a good perk.
By the time this perk was released, it wasn't a big deal, but right now there are so many perks that turn a generator yellow.
Oh, okay.
There's at least 2 or 3 survivor perks that turn it yellow. At least 2 killer perks that turn it yellow, I think. There's Trail. Yeah, at least Trail. And this is just so weird, man.
Yeah.
Like, we have perks like Deja Vu.
Okay, I'm going to skip this.
Very good information perk for the range.
Yeah, Deja Vu is just... I made a video recently talking about ranking survivors by their perks, and yeah, Deja Vu just outclasses that and like Rookie Spirit in every way.
Sidious. We'll avoid this.
So I guess this is why he's putting it in here, is because he put Adrenaline in where the, you know, end game hits and they're just phew, boom, you know. NOED can be gone in like, you know, 20 seconds into the end game.
The biggest problem with NOED is that survivors kind of get punished for cleansing totems as well. If you cleanse a couple totems throughout the match, congratulations. Now the totems that are left are all better hidden. And
it shows the aura 24 meters away of the hex. Right, so this is like if they did something similar to this where Made for This had a short timer and actually gave them a downside, that's the killer equivalent, right? You get the 5% haste for only 10 seconds and there's a downside of no bloodlust. Now imagine they Made for This. You know, you get the 3% speed for 30 seconds and you can't be healed for a minute. Right? So the killer knows it's there. That's basically how you could make Made for This an actual balanced perk. But they did that with Killer to try and do something. I don't know. They greed every palette in the game because they have Made for This to allow them to make an extra loop around everything. All right, let's check out Q.
I also feel similarly about Coup De Grace. This perk, I'm not gonna say it got overbuffed, but it's in a really weird spot right now.
I think it's fun. I never use it.
Now you have 4 lunges that are extremely long, and survivors have no warning that it's there. So I also feel like in chase as a survivor, this is gonna just motivate you to play super safe, to pre-drop every pallet.
Dude, I load up Billy right now anyway. They camp and pre-drop everything on the map. On the most fun killer to play against in the game, they suck all the fun out of it. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty good, and it really helps with the people who will tap a gen, and as soon as they hear Killer Tyrannus, they start crouching edge map, and you can't find them. That's like the one utility of this perk if you're not playing, Nurse, something like that. Otherwise, I'll pretty much never use this.
That are currently bought.
I think he's going to mention how Pain Res is hitting stuff with Deadlock, and I wasn't even convinced that this was a bug. I thought this was behavior trying to make the perks kind of synergize well together. Like, I like the idea that the Pain Res and stuff can't hit Gen with Repressed Alliance, but Gen that you blocked as the killer does work. I'm not positive. Let's see what he has to say.
Bugged.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff I disagree with him on in that video. Some stuff I definitely agree on. There's stuff that could be changed in the game for sure. But seeing Pentimento at the one spot when MFT and stuff is in the game was really mind-blowing to me. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.